We're at SL Billiards in New York with AccuStats, where Korean master Cho Chung-sup is going to try a forced draw off the red ball, around the white, and back into the corner to the other red. Bang, there it goes. Wow, look at that action, and the crowd really loves it.
Pool. Throughout the ages, it's been played by kings and commoners, saints and scoundrels, sharks and their marks. Over the years, many of these players have added something new to the game. Bob Byrne has added insight. Author, engineer, top-ranked billiard player, and internationally recognized authority, Bob not only knows what works on a pool table, but he can teach you why it works. In his previous tapes, Byrne's standard video of Pool and Billiards Volume 1 and 2, he shared this knowledge with players all over the world. Now, he's ready to open his bag of tricks. Tricks anyone can do, once he shows you how.
Hi, I'm Bob Byrne. I'm going to give you a tour of the wonderful world of trick shots. There are more trick shots than you can shake a cue stick at. Some of them are hundreds of years old. We'll take a look at some of those. Others are so new that they have only been performed in the last few minutes or the next few minutes. They were invented just for this tape, and you'll see them here for the first time. I did a book on trick shots, and in that book, Byrne's Treasury of Trick Shots, there are more than 300 trick shots explained and diagrammed, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Some trick shots are useful as bar bets, if you like swindling your friends, and who doesn't? You'll find ways to do that. But all trick shots are either funny or surprising or ingenious, and we're going to have a lot of fun taking a look at them. In the next 30 minutes or so, the emphasis is going to be on shots that any decent player can make, and sometimes they're children. These are shots that you can make with a bit of coaching and practice. I'll supply the coaching, you do the practicing. I've already had a lot of coaching from such great players as Mike Massey, Paul Gurney, Bill Marshall, Bob Jewett. They know a lot about trick shots, and they shared a lot of their knowledge with me, and I thank them for that. Other players I will mention as I go along. Now, for some of the details of certain cluster shots, you'll find the diagrams in my book in some cases. I know you can't bring a videotape to the table, so books are better than a video for certain shots. If you have the 2 volumes of Byrne's standard video of pool, you know already about such things as draw or backspin, follow or topspin, English or side spin, which affects the angle off the rail. You know about throw, which throws the object ball or the cue ball off the indicated line. Now, if you've neglected these tapes, you better pick them up because you need those techniques in order to make some of the harder shots. Where I think it might be helpful for you to understand the shot, I'll show a graphical inset of cue elevation or the exact spot you hit the cue ball or the line of aim. Let's get started. I love this stuff, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Many of these trick shots come up in game situations, and the more trick shots you know, the more predicaments you'll be able to get out of in a game. Unfortunately, some of them are illegal. You'll be able to recognize the illegal ones on occasion because a tennis ball will appear or a ball tray. But in a lot of cases, it's hard to say what is illegal and what isn't. For instance, look at this shot here on the rail. The cue ball and the 9 ball are frozen together, and the 9 is frozen to the rail. Yet it's possible to make the 9 in the corner pocket with a simple push. You just use right-hand spin and push the ball, and it goes right in. It's easier to see the spin involved when you use a striped ball. This is a cue ball with a stripe on it, so you can see the spin. Now, in a normal game, about 2% of the cue ball side spin can be transmitted to the object ball. But when it's on the rail, the amount of spin is exaggerated because the contact between the balls is prolonged. Now, watch the spin when I do the same shot again. You can also make the middle ball of a 3-ball stack. Again, I'll use the striped ball as my cue ball, and this time the middle ball will squirt into the corner pocket. You have to push, you can't stroke. You put the tip against the ball and just push. The ball spin right in. I want to show you one more that's really illegal because it's a deliberate miscue. Let's say you have this position. This was shown to me by Bill Marshall, who's one of the main inventors of trick shots in this country, and he credits it to Wimpy Lassiter, so I call it Wimpy's pinch. The cue ball is frozen to the 9. I'm going to hit the 9 and make the 15. Again, I have to use a miscue, and although miscues aren't fouls, they are if you hit the cue ball twice. Now, if the 9 ball moves, it means I've hit it first. Use an extreme action, and you can knock that 15 in if you're lucky. I'll try it one more time. There it is. If you shoot that fast, your opponent might not realize that you hit the cue ball twice, actually. Here's one more. Jim Rempe showed me this one. The cue ball is frozen to the 9, and they're at an angle. It doesn't seem possible that you can make the 9 in a corner. But with a deliberate miscue, that may or may not be a foul. You'll almost have to watch it in slow motion to see. Use an extreme right push, and you can make the 9 right in. Some referees would call that a foul because of a double hit. But on the other hand, it might not be a double hit. That might be legal. The rules are a little ambiguous. Whether you can get away with that in the game might depend on the size of your opponent. Here's another position where cheating helps. It doesn't look like you can make the 11 here. Say you're playing 8 ball, and you have to hit your striped ball first and try to make something. You can make this, and it's too fast for the eye to follow. I'm going to try to make the 11 from this position. Now that is impossible to see, but in slow motion you can see what happens. The cue ball, the first 2 object balls, split aside. I continue to follow through with my cue, and I knock the 11 in with my cue tip. For your own safety, I wouldn't try this in a real game. Here's another position. Look at the way these balls are arranged. It doesn't seem possible that you can make both of them in one shot, but it is possible if you're willing to commit a felony. Here's how. The cue ball will go right over to make the 1, and the 5 will go right in the side pocket. The only way you can do that is to shoot exactly between the 2 balls so that half of the tip hits the cue ball and the other half hits the 5 ball. The angle of the divergence will depend on the width of the shaft and also how high you hit the 2 balls. So you'll have to fuss with this at home. Here's how it looks. In slow motion, you can see what happens. I hit both balls at once. I thought of this in the middle of the night one time. I could hardly wait to see if it worked. And I jumped out of bed and went to a pool hall and found out that it did work. But I was divorced a couple months later. I have some information for you on secret substances. Substances like chalk and moisture, well, spit. Substances that have befuddled onlookers for hundreds of years and have given pool balls weird and uncanny effects. I'll tell you about them, but give me a minute to change into something more comfortable. Here's a delicious application of the use of secret substances. We have 2 balls frozen on the rail and frozen together, and a 7 ball at an angle. Now normally you might think that if I shoot right into the 7, the 14 will travel right down the rail and go into the pocket, but it won't. And you'll know why if you watched my instructional videos. Now watch the 14 diverge from the rail. But there is a way of making that shot, and it has to do with the application of the secret substance, in this case a little moisture from your tongue. You apply that at the contact point between the 14 and the 10, so that when you freeze the 14 to it, the contact point is moist. That will eliminate the friction, and the 14 will not throw. Thus, it will stay on the rail. I sometimes have some fun by saying the secret is to use the butt end of your cue. You can put a secret sauce on the cue ball that's impossible any other way, so that now when I strike it, it stays on the rail, goes right in. You do that over and over, and they'll never figure out why you can make it and they can't. Here's a little known and unusual application of the principle. It's in a book written by Fred Herman in 1902. I think it's still available from Dover, called Tricks and Games on the Pool Table. They're not really shots, they're just novelties. Here's the idea. Challenge a person, your friend, to see how far he can squirt the 11 ball down the table in this fashion, squirting out from his finger. As you can see, the ball picks up backspin and doesn't want to roll. And while he's watching his ball, you secretly apply some moisture to your finger. so that when it's your turn, there will be no friction between your finger and the ball. And you can easily squirt the ball all the way down the table. Again, you've won the bar bet. Moisture eliminates friction in throw. Chalk increases it. Now here are two ordinary balls, uncontaminated by odious substances, pointed straight down the table, a little bit off center. I can throw those offline somewhat by using an angular hit. Now watch, the 13 will go maybe 6 inches offline from where it was aimed. Now if you use chalk at the contact point, such as this, take a piece of chalk and rub a big spot on a ball. Now if you put that at the contact point between the cue ball and the object ball, you can greatly exaggerate the amount it throws offline. Now watch the divergence this time. You can throw it way over to the left, sometimes all the way over into the corner pocket. Voila! Geniuses sometimes invent things independently, and that's the case here with this shot. Derek Nell and Bill Marshall both thought of this shot, even though they live on opposite coasts and don't even know each other. The idea is this: freeze two balls together close to the side pocket and frozen to the rail. Put the cue ball frozen to the same rail, and the challenge is to make the 6 somewhere. It doesn't seem possible that it can be made anywhere. But if you shoot down here with outside English to eliminate any friction, the 6th ball hits the 9, picks up just enough turn to bank in the side. Those balls are ordinary. They're not doctored in any way. Now let's see if the 6 banks in the side. There it is. I began to wonder what would happen on a shot similar to the one we just tried if you chalked the contact points. So now I've rubbed a little chalk on the 6th ball. We can now move the balls a foot away from the side pocket. Freeze them together, freeze them to the rail, put the cue ball against the rail. It certainly doesn't seem possible now that you could bank the 6 in the side, but with the chalk there to increase the friction, it picks up a little, the 6 will pick up a little turn from the 9 and often bank right in the side. Let's see what happens here. There it is. Amazing. And just because you know a lot of trick shots doesn't mean you can give an entertaining show. You have to have it all sequenced, you have to be well practiced, you have to know how to interact with an audience, and you have to use some showmanship. Put some real bang in your shots. Now I'm going to show you some really explosive shots. Here's the first one. Did that get your attention? It looks even better with the lights dimmed. This is done by getting a roll of caps from a toy store, the kind used in cap guns. And you just take a piece of Scotch tape, tape it to the ball, and then make sure that's right at the contact point. Then you get those explosive effects. Fortunately, those caps don't harm the balls in any way. Oh, just kidding. We did that with a chisel. I have a series of related shots to show you, and I'll tell you why they're related in a minute. Now look at this position. Say you had to make the 10 in the side, and then the next shot was going to be the 13. You wouldn't want to make the 10 straight in because you'd be stuck. The best way would be to kiss the 10 off the 13 so that it brings the 13 off the rail. Now you have an easy shot back into the corner. However, there's another way to handle this where you can make both balls with one stroke. Again, it's a chance to use the butt end of the cue for the secret sauce. Now watch what happens. Both at once. Try that in your spare time. If you like that shot, I want to tell you how to make it. You can't just use 2 ordinary balls. You need 2 balls that I call Siamese balls. They're screwed together solidly, and not only can you make that shot, but a lot of other neat shots as well. Now if you want to make these at home, all you need is a 7/64 drill bit. Take 2 seconds, or find some balls from a dealer maybe that match your own balls. Drill about ½ an inch in on each ball. Then take a number 6 drywall screw, screw it in till it's snug, then snip it off and screw the other ball in the other way until they tighten right up. See, and you can unscrew that just like that. Ken Funk, the art director here for Premiere, who on this production, that's how he did it. A mechanic up at Buffalo Billiards, where I usually play, made me a set of these using a machine screw. Lots of great stuff with the Siamese balls. Remember this old executive toy where you'd pull one ball out and drop it and one ball pops out the other end, back and forth endlessly? That's a principle of physics that you see in pool all the time. Here I've set up a demonstration. You can use this as a bar bet too. One ball goes into this chain of balls, one ball pops out like that. However, if you secretly ring in the Siamese balls, you'll have a stunt that nobody can duplicate. Now, if you throw one ball in, two balls will pop out. The Siamese balls. You should do the Siamese balls first, then let your opponent try it, and he'll be using innocent balls and won't suspect a thing. He will not be able to make two pop out by throwing one ball in. Devilish, huh? Mike Massey has a lot of fun with this shot, with audience participation. Ask somebody up from the audience who can play a little, and ask him how many of these 4 balls he can bank without missing. The first one is pretty easy, especially for someone who thinks they can bank. The second one is maybe slightly harder, but most players could handle it. It's the last two that will give the player a bit of problem, because it's the Siamese balls. There's no way you're going to bank those. And another thing I'd like to explain is how to balance one ball on another. You can do it with ordinary balls, but it takes forever. It helps a little if you can find a ball with a little imperfection, like a little nick out of it. But if you flatten one little spot on each side of the ball, then it becomes a lot easier, especially if you're going to do things for other people. I sometimes fool people by saying it's a matter of static electricity, then you can balance it. And then they go home and try for hours to do that. But actually, it's an outrageous fraud. I made this ball myself with a large drill and a vise. I painted the jaws of my vise with a felt tip pen and tightened them up on the ball, giving me a little red spot exactly opposite the other one. Then with the large drill, start a hole, but stop just after you've got a little dished impression. And once you have that impression, you can't see it even at close range. That's why I put it right in the number. And you can do a lot of nice things with balanced balls. And a lot of the top professionals give themselves that advantage because paying customers don't want to see you spending hours trying to balance one ball on another. But with a little help from a fake ball, you can do it. There it is. It gives you a big advantage on the audience. They don't know about this trick or this one. Let's see what we can do with this doctored 12 ball that has a flat spot on each side. After all, we went to the trouble of making it. Here's one shot you can try. Place it next to the side pocket and balance the cue ball on top of it, like that. Now the idea is to shoot the cue ball across the table, come back, and make the 12. You need just a little bit of left English. The next one's a little bit harder because we want to put the cue ball on the bottom and the 12 ball on top. It's a lot harder to balance the two balls when the legitimate one is on the bottom, as you'll find out when you try it. But once you get it, you're in position for another interesting shot. This time, I'll try to bank the cue ball across and back and hit the 12 without letting the dropping 12 ball hit my cue. So if you practice this, you've got to get your cue out of the way in a big hurry. There. Let's look at that again in slow motion. There's a few other things we can do. If you can draw the ball, you might try this one. Again, we have to get the 12 ball on top. The idea here is to shoot the cue ball out from under the 12, knock the 5 in the side, and then draw back and knock the 12 in this side. Again, you have to get the cue out of the way or the dropping 12 will hit it. There it is. It's good practice at home. I have one more I want to show you with the stacked balls. I like this shot because it's a 3-cushion shot, and that's my favorite game, 3-cushion billiards. The idea here is to knock the 12 in, the 5 drops, the cue ball goes around the table to come back to make the 5. I first saw Anton Renitti make this. Here's the idea. No problem. I call this next group of shots great escapes. It's a way of getting out of a predicament that first seems impossible, or at least difficult. Something like a split in bowling where you're really up against it, but if you know what to do, you can come out a winner. Here's a case where the cue ball is trapped by the jaw of the pocket and you don't have a clear shot at the 8. The corner of the pocket is blocking the path of the cue ball. But there's a lot of ways to get out of this particular position. For instance, you could just bank once up to the other end of the table. That would be one way. Another way might be the 3-cushion shot of, for instance, that path is blocked. That's another way. Another way might be a masse, but I don't want to ruin the table, so we won't try that one. A final possibility, not a final possibility, but a difficult one, is to shoot right into the face of the pocket. That's a 4-rail shot, because the first one is right there. That's pretty tough. And finally, we have the pocket point solution, where you shoot off the point of the pocket to make the ball. That looks like this. I made this in a game about a month ago. It's the first time in my life it ever came up just like this. Not too tough when you know how. There is one other way of making the shot. It depends on distracting your opponent's attention just for a second. It goes like this, and you've got it. Here's a proposition that you can have some fun with. Find a friendly stranger, put the balls in this position, and challenge him to make the end ball, the 15 ball in this case, in this corner pocket without banking the cue ball to the end of the table. It seems impossible, but there is a special trick that makes it possible. And remember this idea because you can use it in games. Here's the thing. Go right off the point of the side pocket. The 15 goes right in. It's a little harder with 2 balls and still harder with 1, but with 3 it's pretty easy. Try it at home. By now I'm sure you've figured out that the points of the pockets can be made use of, not just in trick shots, but in games too. This is a practical idea. In this position, the 7 ball blocks the cue ball's path to the 9, but if I can hit that point, the cue ball will scoot along the rail and make the 9. Let's see if we can do it. There it is. One final tip about using the pocket points. In this position, the 2 is frozen against the point of the side pocket. If I cut the 2 in, the cue ball goes down table and possibly away from my next ball, which is the 1 in a game of 8 ball. But if I shoot straight at the 2 with left-hand English, the cue ball stays in the center of the table so I can get at the 1 for my next shot, like that. Very helpful in games. I'm going to demonstrate another principle that's very practical in games. In fact, it's become a major weapon in the tournaments today. Notice how these 3 balls are lined up, the cue ball in the middle, and the space is just a hair smaller than the cue ball, or the same width as the cue ball. So you'd need a lot of skill, one would think, to get through that space without hitting either ball, say to make the 4 ball down there. But if you use this technique, it's not hard at all. See, I did it. And you can do it too, because it really isn't that hard. Here's the secret. It's a jump shot. Now, it's perfectly legal to jump the ball, provided you do it by shooting down on the cue ball. It's illegal to get under it and scoop it over. So elevate the back of your cue, shoot straight down at the middle of the cue ball. Don't get too far on top spin, or you might trap the cue ball under the tip. But right at the middle, and you don't even have to shoot that hard. The jumping action is obvious in slow motion. I'll bet you'll be doing that after a few tries. This is a common position in many trick shots. The 2 ball is on the spot and the 5 ball is frozen to it, so that the line of centers goes right to this corner of the corner pocket. A cue ball coming from this direction will then throw the 2 in the corner and the 5 goes in the other pocket. To dress it up, let's put a cloth over it. This is the same position we just demonstrated. The cue ball can barely pass through there. But to dress up the shot even more, you can add a triangle. And I'm going to go through the triangle and the balls and try to make the 2 invisible balls. Everything goes when you do it right. For a really big jump, prop the one ball up on a piece of chalk and put a line of balls there. You can think of them as buses and call it the Evel Knievel shot. That's what Mike Massey calls it. You can just use a level cue. I'm going to try to shoot the one over all the buses, through the triangle, and into the corner pocket. Don't try that at Caesar's Palace. Here's something you can try some night when you can't sleep. It's called Idiot's Delight. See how many pairs of balls you can knock in the pockets in this fashion without looking. You can probably do better. You know, this was shown to me by Bob Jewett, who has a PhD in engineering. Here's another thing you can try on those long, lonely nights. It's called the coin in the glass. It's probably 100 years old. The coin is on the rail, a little bit back from the lip. You'll have to experiment to see just how far back and how hard to hit this. But if we're lucky, we can shoot right at the coin. The compression of the rubber will send the coin in the air and maybe right in the glass. Let's see what happens. There it is, right in the glass. Try it. It's fun. I don't know why. Here's an old trick from Fred Herman's 1902 book. The idea is to freeze two balls together against the cushion and prop the 8-ball up on top. The challenge here is to shoot the cue ball down the table and hit the 8 without hitting the 1 and the 5. And it seems impossible, but you could teach your kid sister to do it. And her success may lead her to a glamorous career as a pool hustler. Now here's how it's done. It's probably better if you shoot slowly. An old trick, but a good one. Let's look at that again, this time with a little different camera work. Send the cue ball down. A lot of people know that shot, but I wanted to make sure you did, so you'll never get taken. You're welcome. I'm going to show you now the best trick in the whole tape. It's how to go into a bank and get something for nothing. Yes, you can go in and ask for coin wrappers, and I'll be happy to give them to you, if for no other reason to stop you from breaking your piggy bank on the counter. Now with these coin wrappers, and they can be any denomination, dimes, nickels, pennies, anything, there's a whole raft of very interesting trick shots on a pool table that you can make. I should know because I invented most of them. One of them involves cutting a coin wrapper to a length of 2.5 inches, which is just a little bit more than the diameter of a ball. Then you can prop up a ball on it next to a full-length wrapper in an overlap position like this, and I'll show you in a minute what can be done with that. There are other trick shots involving coin wrappers that I've explained in my book, but I'll show you just a few right now at the table. About 10 years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and wondered if balls falling from coin wrappers would stay in exactly the same position when they landed. And I got to a table as fast as I could, and I was delighted to find out that they do. In other words, you can set up a combination. Take the wrappers out with a speeding cue ball, and then the combination is still in position. Now here's an example, say from a game of 9-ball. If in 9-ball, if you hit the lowest numbered ball first and make the 9, you win. So say they came to rest in this position. Not too likely, but if it ever happens, you want to be ready. From here, I'm going to hit the 1 ball first and make the 9 in this pocket. If you want to try this at home, remember to use a little bit of right-hand English to bring the cue ball back. There it is. You make the 9, you take the money, you win the game, you lose a friend, but that's the way it goes. One of the cutest things I ever did was invent the overlap shot. If you want to try it at home, cut one coin wrapper to 2.5 inches. That's just a little bit bigger than a ball. You set up one of the balls on the short one and the other one on the long one. When I first showed this shot about 10 years ago, it sped around the country with blinding speed. It's easy, it's different, it's surprising, and nobody knows what's going to happen. And this is what's going to happen. I'm going to make all 3 of these balls in one shot. And you'll be able to do it too once you see me do it. Watch. There it is, the famous overlap shot. There are a lot of things you can do with pool equipment that have nothing to do with winning games or really even with the rules of games. If you can free yourself from the concept of games and rules, there are all kinds of tricks and stunts that are possible that'll make you the object of wonder to children and attractive to members of the opposite sex. But that's another tape. I'm going to show you some tricks and stunts now that are intended for recreational use only, not for gambling. Because gambling, as you very well know, is sleazy. At the end of a session of pool, when you're putting the balls back in the tray, there's a few shots you can make involving the tray. You can shoot them as if they're afterthoughts. Now you have to have a certain kind of tray. It's this black plastic with a curled rim. A ball will bounce off of that. Here's a shot that I rather like. You leave the 15 ball in that corner pocket, and you make a 5-cushion shot, except one of the cushions is the ball tray. Look. That's one. Another good one is this. Put the tray with the diagonal pointing toward that pocket. The 15 goes here, and we'll try to make the 15. There's the 15. Another one is put the tray about 2 inches to the left of the center diamond. This goes there. We'll try to make the 15 in the side. There's 3 pretty nice ball tray shots. Look at this. It's impossible to bank that 7 in the corner because the cue ball will double kiss it and trap it like this. But there is a way to make that. The trick is to use a ball lighter than the cue ball. Let's say a ball of this type, a tennis ball. Now the tennis ball is so much lighter than the 7 that it bounces off and doesn't double kiss it, and it's possible to bank the 7. And there's something funny about that hyperactive cue ball. Here's a little confection from Spain. Valeriano Pereira Sanz, an exhibition player in Spain, has made this famous. I call it the Spanish squeeze. There's kind of a knack to it. The idea is to get these 2 balls rolling toward the pocket and keep them rolling all the way into the corner. Something like that. Maybe you can do better with some practice. Here's another little trifle you can practice your manual dexterity on. The idea is to try to make the 8 ball with the cue ball without hitting the interfering ball. Try this. Well, that's one way. It's not a very legal way. I think you're going to like this one. We have 2 balls in the corner, and what I propose to do is cut the 6 in, send the cue ball down to the other end of the table, and through this gap, without touching the ball tray, to make the 9. Impossible, you say, nobody is that accurate. But you know what? You are, once you know the trick. Now watch this. Nothing to it. Railroad shots have been around for 100 years, and everybody loves them. I'm going to show you a simple version so that you can do it at home. Nobody knows who the eccentric genius was that invented this concept, but he certainly deserves the Congressional Medal of Excellence. When you do it, make sure the 2 cues are lined up right at the 12 ball, and that the ends of the 2 cues are the same length. Now, to make the shot, you have to be able to apply a little bit of right-hand English with security, and you have to get the right angle off the 2, and you have to shoot at just the right speed. Because if you shoot too softly, it won't make the hill. If you shoot too hard, it jumps off the end of the table. If you shoot it just right, the Tunerville trolley goes right down there and makes the 12. That's the railroad shot in its simple form. The shots we've seen so far, you can make if you really work at it and you have a little skill. But there are a lot of shots you can't make, and neither can I. They're the province of certain specialists from around the world who have practiced the monster stroke shots, the power draws and the force follows and the masses. And one such master is from South Korea. His name is Cho Chung-sup. Now in May of 1992, I narrated a series of tournament tapes from SL Billiards in Flushing, New York, and a feature of the tournament was a performance by Mr. Sup. And I'm going to show you a few of his miracle shots right now. They're done on a billiard table, which is bigger than a pool table and has no pockets. Watch what this guy can do with the cue ball. To make a point in 3-cushion billiards, you have to make your white ball hit one object ball, then 3 or more rails before it hits the second object ball. And as if that's not tough enough in Korea, they add a second white ball as an obstacle that you must not hit. The first shot we're going to see by Cho Chung-sup is a force follow. On the right is American 3-cushion champion Sang Lee carrying a cue shaft to point out what's going to happen. Now Cho is going to try to hit the red ball with the cue ball, hit one rail. The cue ball backs up and then dives into the corner for the second and the third rail. And now he can't hit the second white. That's an obstacle. Now let's see if he can get the correct follow action. This takes a tremendous stroke. Watch this. Bang, there's one rail, into the corner, 2, 3, and the other red ball without hitting the white. There's great action, but if you try it yourself, you're liable to break your cue. The next shot we'll see is a power draw shot. He's going to try to hit the red ball, hit a rail, curve around the white ball, and go up into the corner the way Sang Lee is indicating. This will be 4 rails if he does it right. Now it takes a lot of power, a level cue, low right hit on the cue ball. Adjusting that cue ball just so. Everybody is hushed. Now he takes his position, aims, sets himself, bang, 1 rail, 2, 3, 4. He did it. Great shot. Mr. Sup has changed to a masse cue now, which is shorter and stiffer and heavier. He's going to try to hit 1 red ball, come up the rail without hitting the second white ball. Then the cue ball will change its mind and go back up the other way to hit the other red ball. Let's see if we can try this. This is a real feat. 1, 2, 3, back it goes to the other red, and there is 4 rails, a perfectly executed masse shot. To conclude his first show in New York, Mr. Cho Chung-sup is going to try a masse shot in a corner. Now, there used to be an old shot here with this position. You hit the red ball, the cue ball fights into the corner and makes 3 or 4 rails and then the other red ball. But he hits it so hard, or he's going to try to hit it so hard, that it'll repeat itself. I'll count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, or 10, I don't know, but that's terrific action. And oh, look here on the right. Sang Lee is raising his hand in triumph as the crowd really appreciates it. Gosh, that's really amazing, isn't it? We'll have some more of his miracles on the next tape. Well, I hope you enjoyed what we did here today, and I hope you have a lot of fun with the game. It's not just about winning. Hope you learned something. Okay, now take a nap and then start practicing. And remember, on the next tape, there's a lot more amazing stuff. As for me, I'm out of here.